Hi, you are watching Revenge of Reddit. I made a mistake and cheated on my husband. Now everyone rejects me, and my sister is trying to take away my husband and my family. I don't even know where to begin, but I feel I need advice, especially from women who have gone through something similar. I feel very ashamed, even though I'm not even using my real name because I know I've made a very big mistake. My biggest fear is losing my family, my husband, my children, and that's what has led me to write this here. I suppose I'll call myself Sonia to tell you this story. I'm 38 years old. I've been married since I was 23, and I'm the mother of 3 wonderful girls. My oldest daughter is 14 years old, and my husband is everything I always dreamed of in a partner. He's a good man, kind, always attentive to our family. He's thoughtful, hard-working, and above all, he has loved me like no one else. So I know the first question that will come to anyone's mind reading this is, why did you cheat on him? I want to share my story, not to justify what I did, but because I need to understand how I got here. As I said, I'm a teacher and a very dedicated mother to my daughters. Over the years, my husband has always been by my side, helping me as much as he could because his work was always demanding, but that never stopped him from being present. When I met him, I was a young woman full of life. I took good care of myself, had a good figure, exercised. In fact, I met my husband thanks to my sister, Sylvia, because they had been friends since school. He never caught my attention in those first days. To be honest, I was interested in other guys, the typical attractive and athletic boys. Zach, my husband, was the opposite, thin and reserved. Despite that, there was something about him that made me see beyond appearances, and over time we built something special. We got to know each other more deeply, and just one day after Sylvia's birthday, we started our relationship. What came after were years full of happiness. My husband and my sister always maintained that close friendship. They were like best friends, but there were never secrets between us. Zach always included her in his plans, and when he wanted to surprise me, Sylvia already knew everything, as if she were his accomplice. I remember those days with such nostalgia. They were so perfect. Those memories are a refuge that hurts to recall because they were moments when I felt nothing in the world could harm us. A few years later, after finishing college, Zach proposed to me. I accepted without thinking. I was so happy. That was one of the happiest days of my life. I felt complete, loved, ready to begin our life together and start a family. Everything was so clear, so real. That's why now, looking back, I can't understand at what point I threw it all away. After we got married, I got a job at a school in our city. Zach opened his own business, and thanks to that, we were doing quite well financially. We weren't rich, but we had enough to live without worries. When our first daughter was born, I felt my life was complete. She has her father's eyes, that caramel tone that always captivated me. For me, my family was everything. Then our second daughter came, who has blonde hair like me. Everything continued to be perfect until our third daughter was born. With her, something changed inside me. I went through a postpartum depression that I didn't know how to identify at first. I felt listless, without motivation. I couldn't take care of myself, much less my family. Those were 3 very dark years. I left my job and devoted myself to staying at home, but it wasn't really a relief. I spent the day taking care of my daughters, and then threw myself on the bed to cry or watch anything on TV, as if that way I could distract myself from the sadness consuming me. My husband, worried, encouraged me to go to therapy. He said I needed to be well for myself and for our family. He accompanied me to every session, but nothing seemed to change. We tried with another therapist, who made me see that after 3 pregnancies, my body had changed, and that this also affected me psychologically. She was right. I was no longer the same physically. My clothes didn't fit like before, and, although I was still a young woman, I couldn't see myself with the same self-esteem as before. With the support of my husband and my daughters, I began to exercise at home and eat healthier. I started to feel a little better, and the love and support of my family were always there, my main drive. A few weeks later, a friend convinced me to join the gym she went to. At first, it seemed like a good idea. The youthful environment, the boys and girls motivated in their routines, made me feel that I wanted to look like that. Strong, renewed. It was like an incentive to recover the image I had of myself. Although deep down I knew it would never be exactly the same. After all, I had 3 daughters. During those first months at the gym, everything was going well. Zach always supported me, saying that if it made me feel better, he was happy for me. But now I realized that if I could, I would go back in time and ask him not to let me go. I wish he hadn't allowed me to enter that world which, although it seemed harmless, led me down a path I never should have followed. Things got out of control. Although I tried to stop it, my decisions only dragged me deeper into this situation I now want to escape. I tried to avoid going out with the gym instructor, but my friend, the same one who had convinced me to join, insisted this was a unique opportunity. According to her, nobody had to find out, and she didn't see the problem in me having a little fun. I let myself be carried away. One day, the instructor invited me to go out with his group of friends after a training session. He took me to a place where they all used to gather, and being in that environment made me feel like I was 20 again. Of course, I was the oldest in the group, but the adrenaline blinded me. My friend became my accomplice, and soon after she also began going out with another guy from the gym. That life, full of thrills and fleeting adventures, had me trapped. I started making up excuses to leave the house on weekends and spent more and more time at the gym. My husband and my daughters were happy to see me active and energetic again, but they also began to miss me. They showed it with gestures and words I ignored. I even remember my second daughter sadly asking, "Are you going out again, Mom?" Thinking about it now breaks my heart, but at the time, I only thought about how to dodge their questions and keep living that double life. Everything got worse when one day I forgot to pick the girls up from school. My husband called me, and, noticing my distraction, confronted me. He told me that, although I was physically at home, it felt like my mind was somewhere else. I assured him that he and our daughters were my priority, but we ended up arguing about other things I had been neglecting at home for quite some time. It was obvious he was trying to wake me up, to help me, but I wasn't listening. The argument ended there without any real solution, and I thought it would all be forgotten. The next thing I remember is that my husband talked to my sister. She had been helping me with the girls during the hardest moments of my depression, and although she'd once told me she didn't think it was right that I spent so much time at the gym, she never judged me openly. But when she came to talk to me that time, her tone was different, serious, and she began to question me about everything I was doing. I tried to dodge her questions, but I ended up telling her more than I should have. Now, remembering her expression, I'm sure she suspected, especially from the way I talked about the instructor. She asked if I was aware of what I was doing, of the consequences. Even though I tried to deny anything, it was clear she didn't believe me. She offered to come over more often to help with the girls, saying she'd come 5 times a week, though I knew she wasn't doing it just for that. She suspected me and wanted to make sure I wouldn't keep skipping out to see the instructor. But I needed to get out. I needed that escape. Even when I tried to stay home when she came, I ended up finding a way to go see the instructor, to be in that world of young people where I felt alive again. My sister, who is not stupid, started coming at unpredictable times, which kept me constantly on edge. Then came the day that would change everything forever. That day, there was an event organized among several gyms in the city, and I was out all day. My only concern was competing, being around the instructor and the others. The excitement and adrenaline took over, and when the event ended, I didn't want that feeling to stop. We were a big group of about 20 people and decided to stop at a gas station. We were laughing, talking, in our little bubble of excitement, until I saw my sister's car parked there. It was like a bucket of cold water. She didn't confront me at that moment, but she followed me to the motel, where we had planned to keep the party going. At first I didn't notice, but when I realized, it was already too late. We parked at the motel, and that's where my entire life collapsed. I was in the car with the instructor, and, in a moment of weakness, I gave in to my impulses. The next thing I knew, I heard my sister's voice pounding on the car window, crying and shouting my name. I tried to get dressed quickly, but the damage was already done. I got out of the car and her expression shattered me. She yelled at me, asking how I could do this to my family, to my husband and my daughters, who loved me and gave everything for me. Her words hit me like daggers, reminding me that I had everything and destroyed it for a moment of adrenaline and selfishness. With tears in my eyes, I begged her not to say anything, that it would end there, but I knew it was a hopeless plea. My sister, devastated, asked me how long I had been betraying my husband. Every word she said hurt like an open wound. I confessed it had been almost 4 months. She went silent for a moment, and then, without looking me in the eyes, turned around and went to her car. I tried to stop her, to explain, but only managed to earn a slap. I stood there frozen, watching her leave. The instructor, seeing the scene, grabbed my things and threw them in the parking lot before driving off too. In that moment, I had no one. Desperate, I called my friend, and through tears, I told her what had happened. She tried to comfort me with empty words, saying it would all pass, that Zach would forgive me. But the hours felt endless as I thought about my husband, my daughters, and the disaster I had caused. My friend, trying to rationalize the situation, told me I should prepare to look for a lawyer, because most likely Zach would ask for a divorce and fight for custody of our daughters. Fear took over me, and I felt completely alone. When I returned home, I found a chilling silence. My children weren't there, and when I tried calling my husband, there was no answer. Neither my sister nor my eldest daughter picked up my calls. I went up to our room and collapsed on the bed, sunk in despair. I sent voice messages asking for forgiveness, begging for a chance, but the emptiness of their silence only increased my anguish. I cried until I fell asleep, and when I woke up, a new horror awaited me. The next morning, my sister came to the house to pick up some of the girls' things. As soon as I opened the door, without looking at me, she said, "Zach doesn't want to see you. You'll receive the divorce papers soon. You can see the girls at my place when he's not there, but don't even think about taking them. No judge will have mercy after what you've done. The motel parking cameras recorded everything. You can't deny it." I felt my soul leave my body. There was my sister, acting as my executioner, without any compassion. After she left with some of my daughter's belongings, I stood in the doorway feeling a weight on my chest I had never felt before. I decided to do what she suggested, not because I hoped to fix anything, but because I felt a desperate need to talk to Zach, to try to save what little might be left of our family. I called his phone, and, after many attempts, he finally answered. His voice was cold, distant, as if he were speaking to a stranger. I asked to meet and talk, and he said, in a dry tone, that we'd meet at a restaurant. I got there as fast as I could. When I walked in, I saw him sitting at a table in the back, staring at his coffee as if he were in another world. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. and when I approached, he lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. I tried to break the silence and said a timid, "Hi, Zach, how are you?" Even though I knew those words were absurd. He didn't answer. Tears just kept falling in silence. I felt a deep pain seeing him like that, and then I began to speak. I asked for forgiveness, swore that everything would change, that I would do the impossible to make amends, that I would leave everything behind if he gave me a chance. But he said nothing. He stood up, looked at me with a mix of sadness and resignation, wiped his tears, and before leaving, simply said, "I'll send you the divorce papers." I stayed there, motionless, watching him walk away. There was no anger in his words, only a heartbreaking emptiness that I felt tearing me apart. The silence, his indifference, was worse than any shout. I was left alone, feeling my soul abandon me in that moment. Since then, I've cried so much, I have no tears left. In my room, I lock myself in, hide under the sheets, and scream into a pillow. I've asked God for a chance. I've begged in the dark to let me fix this, to give me a second chance to be with my family and repair what I broke. I am tormented by memories of my daughters, my husband, the happy moments that now feel so far away. It's as if they belonged to another life. I hate myself for being so stupid, for trading the most valuable thing in my life for a selfish illusion of feeling young again. Today I will see my daughters again, and I don't know how to face them, especially my eldest, who has always been closest to her father, and whom I know I have deeply let down. I don't know what to say to them. I don't even know if I deserve the right to look them in the eyes after all this. Update 1. When I arrived at my sister's house, she opened the door, and I saw my daughters sitting on the couch. My heart broke when I saw their faces, when I felt the coldness in the air. The little ones greeted me with a, "Hi, Mom," but it was clear they were confused. They didn't know how to react to me. I hugged them, feeling an emptiness consuming me inside, and kissed them with desperate tenderness. Then I looked at my eldest daughter and said a timid, "Hi, love?" And she looked at me with a coldness I had never seen in her eyes. She answered in a dry voice, "What do you want now, Mom?" Those words pierced my heart. My sister tried to soften the situation, caressing my daughter's face and telling her not to speak to me like that. My daughter, however, clung to my sister as if seeking protection. That was when I understood something that destroyed me. My sister was taking the place I myself had abandoned. My youngest, who barely understood what was happening, asked, "Are you going to separate from Dad?" I tried to stay calm and told her that was something Dad and I needed to talk about. But her reply froze me. "So, you don't love us anymore? Is that why you went with your lover?" I didn't know what to say, or who had filled their heads with that. I looked at my sister, who simply lowered her head and said they had overheard our conversations. My eldest looked at me, and with a hardness I never imagined, said, "I already knew, Mom. I'm not stupid. I've known for months about your lover. You behaved like a lovesick teenager, and you made me feel ashamed." I tried to calm her and asked to talk alone, but I saw how she looked to my sister for approval, and my sister told her to go with me to the shed and to call her if she needed anything. There, in the shed, I faced the harshest truth. I tried to tell her how much I missed her, but she simply recalled moments I didn't even know I had missed. She told me things about her life, her day-to-day, and I realized I had been absent much longer than I thought. I could only whisper, "I'm sorry, love." But she said nothing. Her silence crushed me. When we were still there, my sister came out to remind her that her groupmates would arrive soon to work on a school project. That was the reality. My daughter had things more important than me at that moment. I felt that time with her no longer belonged to me. I looked at my sister and, angry, said, "I know what you're doing. You want to take my children, take my family from me. She looked at me without expression and answered, "No. You told me yourself. You chose to walk away from them to live your adventure. You left your family long before your youngest was born. You got lost in your world, and they needed me. It was never my intention to take your place, but someone had to be there." Her voice was cold, cutting, and every word fell on me like a sentence. She reminded me how I had abandoned my husband and daughters long before the affair, how I had sunk into my novels and my depression. I didn't know what to say. The words stuck in my throat. Then my sister went back inside and closed the door behind her, leaving me outside, trapped in my own misery. My daughter came out a little later, when her classmate arrived to pick her up. I watched her say goodbye to my sister and give her a hug, and I thought it should be me saying, "Be careful, love," or "Call me later." But no, it wasn't me anymore. My daughter looked at me briefly, indifferently, and just said, "Bye." I stood there, wanting to scream, wanting someone to hear me and give me back the life I had destroyed. But there was nothing to do. This was happening, and I couldn't run from the reality I had created. I went back home after seeing my daughters, trying to stay calm, but inside, I felt only rage and helplessness. I wanted to yell at my sister, to accuse her of taking my family. When I said goodbye to my daughters, I saw how easy it was for them to let me go, as if I were no longer part of their lives, as if my attempts to get closer evaporated without a trace. It hurt to realize how many times I left when they needed me, and now they were learning to let me go. When I left, my daughters happily put on their coats, and my sister helped them into the car. From the window, I watched them drive away, laughing, not caring whether I was there or not. When I got home, desolate, I decided to call my parents and tell them what was happening, hoping for some support. But they defended my sister. They said she had been there for me when I needed it most, that she had taken care of my family in my absence. I felt betrayed, as if everyone were against me, as if my own family had set me aside. So I decided to seek legal help, but every lawyer told me the same thing, that my actions and negligence had put me in a very unfavorable position. I knew it. I knew I would lose a lot, but I also knew I couldn't give up. I had to get my family back, my daughters. I decided I would talk to Sack once more, that I wouldn't accept his silence as an answer. I needed to try again, even if it meant facing his anger or contempt. Anything was better than this emptiness. A few days passed, and during that time, I sent him a long message, where I tried to explain my feelings, how I had felt trapped in my own sadness. I told him about my depression, how lost I had felt then, and how much it had affected me. I told him that this separation would only bring more pain to our daughters and our life. Deep down, I knew I was trying to manipulate him, to make him feel that he also bore some guilt, that he too had contributed to the distance between us. I told him he should never have let me go to the gym unsupervised, that he should have set rules, paid more attention to what I was doing. I also made it clear that I wouldn't allow my sister to keep my family just because she had supported them while I was unwell. I reminded him that our relationship deserved a second chance, and that it was important for him to fight to save it too. My lawyer had advised me to keep this approach, since in case of separation I would lose much more than Sack, and we had to make every effort to resolve things amicably. After a while, Sack replied. At first, his words shocked me. He said his lawyers had recommended not talking to me. I felt the blood drain from my body reading that. But then he added, "Anyway, we need to talk. It will be the last time." Reading that gave me a small spark of hope. I knew I had one chance, and I had to use it to remind him how much I loved him and how sorry I was. Before he hung up, I said, "I love you," but he didn't respond. I had 2 days to plan how I would talk to him. I knew I had to make my sister look like a manipulator, a resentful woman who wanted to take my family out of envy. During those days, I tried to get closer to my daughters, even if just with short conversations. It hurt to see how used they had become to my absence, how those conversations ended quickly, without the closeness we used to have. My eldest daughter, Ellen, didn't answer my messages or calls. What hurt most was that her 15th birthday was approaching. One day, my daughter Sandra reminded me. Innocently, she said, "Mom, Ellen says she doesn't want you at her party because you'll bring your lover." I froze, speechless, and held back tears. I told her I no longer had a lover, that she should never speak of him again, and I promised I would go to the party. I asked her not to say anything, that it would be a surprise, and she agreed. But before hanging up, she mentioned something that left me frozen. "I'm going to play with Maxie." When I asked who Maxie was, she told me it was a puppy they had adopted with Mom Isabella. I felt defeated. My daughters were calling my sister Mom while I was still alive. I hadn't died, but I felt invisible to them, as if I no longer existed. I tried to find something I could use against my sister, something to help me reverse this situation. However, the only thing I discovered was the sad story my mother told me. My sister Isabella had suffered greatly, trying for years to have children, but she never succeeded. She endured a toxic relationship with her ex-husband, putting up with infidelities, shouting, and humiliations. When he left her, she began divorce proceedings and was left completely alone. I felt guilty because I was never there for her, never supported her in those hard times. Still, although I understood her pain, I wasn't willing to give up. Maybe she deserved a family, but that family was mine, and I wasn't going to surrender it. Finally, the day of the meeting with Sack came. I prepared myself as best as I could, trying to look attractive, but discreet. I didn't want him to think I was still the same as before, but I also didn't want to seem indifferent. When he arrived, I was surprised to see him well-dressed, wearing sunglasses, radiating a confidence I hadn't noticed in him for a long time. In reality, maybe he had always been like that, and I had just stopped paying attention. I approached, trying to sound casual. "You look good," I said. He replied with a simple thanks and asked how I had been. I felt my words stick in my throat, and all I managed to say was, "I cheated on you, Sack. How do you think I've been?" I knew it was a stupid question, but seeing him looking so well on the outside made me assume that inside he was better too. Then I told him everything I felt, that I was deeply sorry, that I never wanted to hurt him, and that if he gave me a chance, I was willing to do anything to repair what I had destroyed. He interrupted me, his voice full of sadness. "Did you love me when you were with your lover? When you were texting him while I was sleeping beside you?" I could only ask for forgiveness over and over again, with tears in my eyes. I begged him not to throw away all these years for a mistake, but he only answered, "A mistake? That mistake lasted months. You lied to my face, said you loved me, and then left to be with him. You chose to be with your lover instead of your daughters. How am I supposed to forgive you?" I felt myself collapse inside as he went on. He spoke about all the effort he had put into our family, while I drowned in my selfishness. "I paid for your gym so you would feel better, not so you could cheat on me," he said, with a harshness I had never seen in him. Then, with a mix of pain and resignation, he said, "There's no solution for us. All I ask is that you be patient with the girls. I don't want them to grow up hating you or blaming me for keeping them away from you. But don't try to force them into anything." I sat there, unable to say a word, as he went upstairs to our room to pick up some papers. I begged him not to leave, told him I loved our daughters more than anything in this world, that losing the relationship I had with them was tormenting me. In a desperate attempt, I tried to blame my sister, told him she was manipulating the girls against me. Sack, without looking at me, answered, "Isabella has been our light in this chaos. She's helped me with the most important thing I have in this world." Then, full of anger, I asked if he was sleeping with my sister. He looked at me, and with a coldness I had never seen in him said, "No, but it's not for your sake that I don't." After that last meeting with Sack, I stayed on the living room floor, crying until I was exhausted. I didn't even have the strength to get up and go to my room. Darkness fell, and I was still there, curled up in the same corner, drifting in and out of sleep with more tears. Since then, I've spoken very little with my daughters. My eldest, Ellen, still refuses to talk to me, and that's what hurts the most. I've accepted that my marriage is over, and during these last 2 weeks, we've begun to discuss the details of the divorce with the lawyers. I'm going to therapy, where I've been able to talk about everything and cry until I'm empty. The therapist encourages me to go on, to think about rebuilding my life and finding a purpose. I believe in a few more months, I'll have the strength to look for a job and keep myself busier. On Ellen's birthday, when she turned 15, even though I knew I had promised to give her space, my heart couldn't take it. I felt like I was dying to see her, to hear her voice, to try to recover something of what we had lost. I bought a gift, one she had always wanted, and without thinking too much, I went to my sister's house. I knew it would be a small party, only with some of Ellen's friends and part of Sack's family. From outside, I could hear the music, and although I knew I shouldn't be there, the desire to see my daughters was stronger. I knocked on the door, and it was Sack who opened it. He looked surprised, and before he could say anything, I explained I just wanted to give Ellen her gift. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but I begged him to let me hand it to her personally, and promised I would leave if Ellen asked me to. He hesitated, but finally let me in. Inside, everyone's eyes were on me in judgment, but I tried to ignore them. I thought of the first time Ellen asked me for that gift, of the excitement on her face when she showed it to me, and of the emptiness I felt now, remembering how, on her last birthday, I had given her something that didn't even come close to what she wanted. I approached and said, "Hi, love. I just came to give you this gift. Open it. You'll like it." She took it with a tense expression, and I saw her hands trembling with anger. When she opened it, I noticed how her discomfort turned into disappointment and rage. "What is this?" she asked, without a trace of emotion. I froze and tried to explain that it was something she had always wanted, but she gave me a cold look and said, "That was when I was 13, Mom. Now I'm 15. I asked you for it when I turned 14, and instead, you gave me a stupid gift for a 9-year-old. Why do you insist on ruining my life?" Her voice grew harder. "Did you know your lover is the brother of the cheer captain? Do you know what they call me at school? I can't go back there without hearing how they mock me. Everyone knows you cheated on Dad. I don't want this gift." My emotions overwhelmed me, and, in a moment of desperation, I slapped her. The instant I did it, I realized the mistake, but the damage was done. My sister ran to me, pushed me, and screamed that I was never to touch Ellen again while she hugged and comforted her. My younger daughters, frightened, ran to their father, who looked at me with a mix of anger and disappointment. Everyone was watching, and Ellen, sobbing, clung to my sister, begging her to throw me out of the house. Then my sister, without letting go of Ellen, whispered softly to her, "It's okay, love. She's leaving now. And you know what? I have a surprise for you. Remember you wanted to go to that white sand beach with the wooden pier? I convinced your dad to go this weekend. That will be your 15th birthday gift, and you can invite some friends." Ellen's expression completely changed, and I saw her smile as she hugged my sister, thanking her and calling her Mom. My younger daughters also ran to them, and she hugged them all, forming an image of a family that no longer included me. I stood petrified, watching that scene. Zach came up to me and coldly said, "It's better if you leave now." I left the house holding back tears, but as soon as I got into the car, I broke down. I drove aimlessly until I stopped somewhere, and then I let out all the rage and sadness. I hit the steering wheel, cried, screamed, and cursed my life and my decisions. Everything was destroyed, and that little hope I had was completely gone. Hours passed, and I was still parked in the same place. Someone must have reported the car because some police officers came to check if I was okay. I got out, unable to hold back, and told them everything that had happened, as if I needed to pour my heart out to someone, even strangers. When I returned home, I found it empty, but I had no strength to move out. Every corner reminded me of happy moments, and I couldn't stop thinking of the day Zach carried me in his arms to cross the threshold of this house when we were newlyweds. A few months later, the day came to sign the divorce papers. I remember waiting for Zach and his lawyer, while mine warned me that Zach didn't want to talk to me and that I should only communicate through his representative. Even so, I wasn't willing to accept that condition. I felt it was my last attempt to recover something from my past life, or at least to close that chapter in a less painful way. When the moment finally came, I tried to look into his eyes, but he avoided any eye contact. Before signing, I begged him, "Is this really what you want? Look at me and tell me if you've truly let me go. Do you really want to take the girls away from me for one mistake?" But Zach didn't react. My lawyer, seeing my state, took my hand and whispered, "Sign, please. This is for the best. You'll be able to rebuild your bond with your daughters little by little, but now is the time to let go." With one last sigh, I finally signed. Zach and his lawyer left, and from that moment I never spoke again with him or with my daughters. Now, he and my sister take care of everything, and although I no longer have any say over my daughters, I understand it's for the best right now. All my focus is on recovering them someday, even though I know it will be a long process. 9 months have already passed since Ellen's birthday. After much effort in therapy, I made a small breakthrough. I was able to see my younger daughters. My therapist prepared me for that moment, although Ellen, my eldest, still doesn't want to know anything about me. Even so, I am willing to wait as long as necessary, hoping that one day she can say hello without resentment in her eyes. With my younger daughters, I've had some moments of closeness, and our relationship is slowly improving. Ellen, on the other hand, continues distant, but I understand and accept it. What I didn't expect, and what took me by surprise, was finding out that Zach and my sister Isabella had started a relationship. I had suspected it, but I wasn't prepared for the blow of learning that she is expecting his child. Apparently, her infertility problems had come from her ex-husband, and now Zach and Isabella are expecting a baby together. I felt deeply hurt, but I know I have to accept what happened and move on. These months have also led me to focus on rebuilding my own life. I've sent out job applications, and although I'm not thinking about starting a new relationship, I am determined to regain some stability. And if anyone wonders about my friend, the one who encouraged me into all this, she has also paid the price for her choices. Her affair ended bitterly, and in revenge, the guy she was seeing sent photos and videos to her husband. Her marriage also ended, and they have already signed the divorce. Now I only have a small part of my life left, and I know I have paid a very high price for my mistakes. I've spent these months crying and regretting, lamenting not having sought help at the right time, not having valued what I had. I miss my family every day, and although I know nothing will ever be the same, I am learning to live with the emptiness I created. I joined a support group for women in similar situations, and in each of them, I see parts of my own story reflected. I've found some comfort in sharing with them, in feeling understood. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for your comments, even the harsh ones, because they have helped me accept reality and understand what I've lost.